Um, Thank you very much, Mr. Burton, for your continued great contribution to the Actuarial Science Society. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our featured speaker today, who is going to give us an insight into her actuarial science career and accomplishment. Sarayyah Baksh is originally from Trinidad and Tobago and a former St. Augustine Girls High School alumni. She worked and lived in Toronto, Canada, where she graduated with a distinction at the University of Waterloo. She is a fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society, a member of Actuaries Without Borders, and serves as the treasurer of the CAE, which stands for the Casualty Actuaries of Europe. She is a pricing actuary at Chubb, a global insurance company where she currently resides in the outskirts of Paris, France. On her free time, she likes to travel, read, and spend time with her boisterous Rottweiler. While she is both fluent in English and Spanish, she describes her French as a work in progress. We now give Ms. Baksh the opportunity to speak to us, and we would kindly ask that all mics be muted. Ms. Baksh?
Thank you so much, Zaleen. Just a little bit of a housekeeping question before I get started. Is it possible to turn the chat on so that participants can leave messages in the chat?
Caitlin?
The chat only works if you're part of our organization, since we use our students' accounts. So
okay, so you can see the chat.
Yeah, but you may not be able to. Yeah,
that's fine. Maybe you can just tell me the questions that are coming in when we have the questions section. You can act as moderator then. Okay, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Sarayyah Baksh, and I'm going to be presenting to you all today. I'm not going to introduce myself. I think that's already been done. But I'm really happy and excited to be here, as you can probably tell from the tone of my voice. I even decided to stand up to present to you because I was just so energized I thought sitting down would be too difficult. I do ask those who are comfortable in doing so to turn on your video cameras. I find in my own personal experience, it really adds a lot to the experience as a speaker and also as a participant. So if your video camera is on, know that I'm looking at you to laugh at all of my jokes, please. Otherwise it's going to be bad. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about two different things. The first part of my presentation is going to be about some general pieces of advice. It's going to be things that I've reflected on and actually researched a little bit as well with my trusted actuarial network to figure out what are some important things that you can benefit from knowing now at this stage in your career. So we're going to talk about that for probably most of the presentation. And then at the end, I'm going to share about my own personal journey and my own steps that I took to be where I am now as a qualified actuary practicing just outside of Paris. So I'm going to share my screen at some points, and then at other points, I'm going to take it away and make it a bit more interactive. I just think I want to create a very informal setting here. So you should feel comfortable to ask any questions and that sort of thing. And then Caitlin will just feed them through to me. Just in terms of that housekeeping though, I'll set aside a couple different points throughout the presentation for questions. So you can save up your questions, and then once I break, we'll share the questions and have a little Q&A, keep going and have another little Q&A. So let me share my screen now and walk you through the agenda. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Okay, so the agenda. we're going to talk about the value of the actuarial science degree. So once you graduate from UE, you have this piece of paper. What does it mean? What can you do with it? We're going to go through a couple myths about the actuarial career, because there are a lot of different beliefs out there, and from what I've seen, not all of them tend to be true. At that point, we're going to be quite interactive. We're going to use the chat feature, and so you'll just type in the chat if you think it's fact or fiction. And I guess, Caitlin, you'll have to be the judge of if the majority are saying fact or fiction, and let me know. Then we're going to look at next steps. So you are here in this moment. What can you do? What should you be thinking about doing? And if I were you, what would I do? So we're going to just explore in a very open way all of the different possibilities that you have and could be considering at this point. And then we'll break for questions, and we'll get a couple, hopefully people have questions in the on the first part of the presentation. Now, I should mention that I did a similar presentation to this with UE Mona a couple months ago, and they were very engaging and they asked a lot of questions, so the pressure is on you now. Then in the second part of the presentation, we're going to look at professionalism and why it's important to start building up your professional persona even while you're still in school. We're going to talk about exams. Of course, it's an actuarial presentation. We have to hit up on the exam topic, of course. So we'll talk about exams a little bit, but unfortunately, I don't have a cheat sheet that I can share with you that'll just tell you exactly how to pass exams. However, I'm going to share a couple tips that I thought were helpful for me when I was going through the exam process. And we're going to talk about the power of networking. And finally, we'll do another Q&A to close off the session. So, up on the screen, you're going to see this diagram. It looks a little bit strange. Definitely, I'm not a graphic designer. But it says, build your SPAN. S-P-A-N. So, the S stands for skills. And I put this diagram together because I think it very concisely explains the whole point of my presentation. Each of the topics that we talk about are going to come back to this, and actually at the end I'm going to test you on this exact diagram too, so you might want to make sure you're paying attention, but don't take a screenshot, okay, because that's cheating. So the S stands for skills, and that can mean technical skills. Of course, in an actuarial profession, your technical abilities do matter a lot, but we're also going to talk about soft skills and the importance of soft skills. Then we're going to talk about your professional persona and why that's important. Then there's the action plan. So that kind of links to the next step section of the presentation, and then network. So these are the building blocks of the presentation, and we're going to keep referring to them about building your SPAN. So keep that in mind. Okay, so the value of an actuarial science degree. Okay, so if you look in the top left corner of the screen, you'll see a big S. And so that means that this slide is pretty much all about the skills section of the building blocks. So when you graduate, what do you get? Well, of course, the most obvious thing is you're now credentialed. There's a credential that says you've been educated in the field of actuarial science. And that's quite a mouthful. And that means a lot. But at the same time, you have developed problem-solving skills. You've developed the ability to do statistical analysis. You've developed your critical thinking, your attention to detail, and your soft skills. The critical thinking I want to come back to a little bit, because when you think about, sometimes, well, actually right now there's a lot of false information being spread around, and you might be bombarded with some very eye-catching headlines that say, studies show X% of people do this and that, and you're like, that doesn't sound right. That's kind of strange. Having an actuarial or mathematical background allows you to kind of question some of these studies a little bit, What's their sample size? How did they actually go about doing their random sampling? Is it a truly random sample? And you might even come to the conclusion that says, hey, I actually don't believe in this. So it gives you the ability to be a bit more critical when you're thinking and when you are absorbing that kind of media, let's say. In terms of your soft skills, communication, if you have to do presentations throughout your undergrad, you'll know that communication is really important, and you do develop that throughout your undergrad. Your teamwork also comes into play when you have group projects. So soft skills are also developed, and we'll see a little bit later when you need to check in and maybe figure out whether your technical skills need some work, your soft skills need some work. It's something that you kind of constantly need to evaluate, because even if you feel very comfortable with your technical skills, let's say 5 years down the road, things might change and you might have to kind of upgrade your technical skills again. In fact, that happened to me because when I was in school, machine learning and artificial intelligence and all of these fancy modeling techniques weren't really as prominent. And so I didn't really learn it the same way that I have interns working with me who learned it. So I have people who I'm trying to manage, and their technical skills in machine learning and in modeling are actually above mine. And so I actually had to go back and do some online courses and re-educate myself to remain relevant. So, that's what I mean when you have to check in with yourself. What is your skill? What is your technical skill level like? And always question whether you need to revisit that, you need to tweak it, and you need to improve it. And the same goes for soft skills. Even if you think you're a good presenter, I guarantee if you watch enough TEDx videos, you might change your mind. No, but really, soft skills you can build, but you can always get better. And the better your soft skills are, I've noticed that actuaries who have strong soft skills tend to stand out and tend to be the ones that management notice and want to promote and want to work with more. So the soft skills really are crucial to the actuarial career. And if you think about it, let's say you do this brilliant technical piece of analysis. If you can't actually explain it, I'll just wait for someone to go on mute. Okay. Yeah. So if you do this brilliant technical analysis and you went above and beyond and you just even you developed a new distribution and you were groundbreaking, if you can't really explain what you've done to someone, it kind of falls flat, especially in the corporate world, because people want to be able to understand what you've done. And now I'm not saying don't go and do this amazing analysis, but you need to think about how can you communicate what you've done to someone who doesn't have an actuarial background, because it actually endears them to you if they feel like they can understand and trust your work, because they've seen all of the different steps that you've taken, and you get more opportunities if people can trust your work. So this brings us to the fact or fiction section. Caitlin, I'm going to need your help now. So if you have the ability to write messages in the chat, I'm going to bring up some statements, and after each statement, just put if you think it's fact or fiction. So the first one is that actuaries only work for insurance companies. What does it look like, Caitlin? I can't hear you. I wonder if you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I said everyone is saying fiction. No one said anything about facts.
Okay, you guys are onto me already. Fine. Yes, you're right. This one is fiction, and that's because actuaries work in many different fields, right? We've seen actuaries work in banking, we've seen actuaries work in tech, we've seen actuaries work for governments. And, I think that any company that has data to be analyzed and risks to be managed can employ an actuary. So the skill sets we have are are broad. But of course, most actuaries end up in insurance, but I think more and more we're seeing that broaden up a little bit. Okay, next. Actuaries are all very well paid. All right, what is it looking like, Caitlin?
They're hoping that it's a fact.
Okay. All right, this one is neither fact nor fiction. I think this one is a very heavy, it depends. But because it says they're all very well paid, I think that's where I'm gonna have to go with fiction. So the range of an actuarial professional the range of their salary can vary a lot. It depends on how many exams you have, it depends on your number of years of experience, it can depend on the region that you're practicing in, it can depend on the company that you're practicing in, it can even depend on the kind of role that you have. And I think, you know, sometimes if we think about those very well-paid actuaries, and usually in an organization, there are a few of them at the very top of the organization who have spent years and years in the profession and have really worked their way up and built their reputation. So don't be disheartened if you are in this, well, to be honest, if you're in this field of study just for the money, I think you might end up being a little bit disheartened just because it's a very, very long, difficult road, and money being your only motivator might not be enough to keep going. But that's a different topic. The answer really is that you get into the actuarial department and you work and you work and you build yourself up, and then yes, of course, as you build and as time goes on and you continue to do a good job, your salary will increase. Actuarial science is all about mathematics and statistics. Okay, what are people saying?
Some say fact, some say fiction.
Okay, so this one is a bit of a trick question. I would say it's fiction, and that's because, yes, as I mentioned, actuarial science is very, very heavily founded in mathematics, statistics, probability theory, but there's also that whole soft skills element, you know. You have to be able to communicate your results, you have to be able to work in a big actuarial department and get along with colleagues. But at the same time, depending on your role, let me preface this, there's a lot of actuaries that need to have business knowledge. In fact, most actuaries need to have a knowledge of insurance. So it's not just about mathematics and statistics. You have to understand the product, you have to understand the market, you have to understand trends, you have to sometimes even understand macroeconomic factors. So it really isn't just about math and stats. It gets a bit more broad as you get into the field. Actuaries have a good work-life balance. Okay, yeah, this one is fiction, and that's obviously because, well, when you're studying for your exams, oh boy, it's really tough. You know, you work all day, you study all night, you study all weekend, and it's really, really tough to have a good work-life balance. Let's talk about after you finish your exams, though. What happens then? Well, again, it depends. So I've seen people comfortably be able to work 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, and that's their work-life balance, and they have a nice evening after work to enjoy, and they don't work on weekends. I've also seen people who are just walking around with their hair frazzled, and they're just working on weekends, they're working late, and it depends on a lot of things. But I think your company has a lot to do with it as well as your role. For example, actuaries who work in reinsurance pricing, they usually have a very, very high season at the end of the year. So they would just be crazy, crazy busy. And then after that, very much relaxed. Well, relaxed, as in it's much more manageable. In my personal role where I am right now, I'm also kind of seasonal like that. So I'm currently just slowly climbing the hill to my very, very high intensity time of year, which will usually be in Q2. And then after that, it kind of goes down, goes back up, and then goes back down. And so, yes, in the high periods, it's really hard to have a good work-life balance. And outside of that, it is possible. So it depends. Okay, the next one is, an actuary's job is depressing because we only look at when people are going to die.
Fiction, obviously.
Okay, fiction, yes. There are just so many different kinds of actuaries, and I feel like more and more there are just new kinds of actuaries coming out all of the time. I can speak for myself, so I'm not a life actuary. I am a P&C actuary, that's property and casualty, so P&C. I think it's also known as maybe general insurance or non-life actuary. And so I've worked with a lot of people in that industry, and some of the work that they do gets really, really interesting. I'm not here just to sell P&C, by the way, but I will say right now, if you haven't fully committed to being a life actuary, I know a lot of Trinidadian actuaries end up going down the life path, but I think P&C really deserves some consideration as well. And I think more and more in the future, P&C is going to become more relevant in Trinidad. So consider it, do some research, see if it appeals to you or not, and yeah, have a go. So I know actuaries on the P&C side that deal with catastrophe modeling. So they're looking at earthquakes, they're looking at hurricanes and flooding, and that all gets very interesting. I personally work in casualty insurance. I'm going to do a quick poll here. So just message in the group chat, do you know what casualty insurance is? And if so, give a little one-liner if you do understand. And then Caitlin will just read out any of the definitions that I got. And if you don't know, just say no, that's totally fine. I'll explain it just after.
Okay, so one person said life insurance so far. Then another person is like protection against damage or general protection against stuff. Like property, for example.
Okay, I'll give you all the definition. Well, not the technical definition, my own definition. All right, so casualty insurance very, very broadly covers 3 different types of events or risks. But the definition is it's trying to cover damages to third parties. So it's third party liability. So what does that mean? Your typical case of a fire or property claim is very straightforward, right? If somebody's house has water damage or somebody's house catches fire and it burns, the insurer pays that because your house caught fire. But casualty is a little bit more obscure. Because we're looking at third-party liability, a classic example would be you go into a supermarket, they just finished mopping the floors, you slip and fall and something happens to your leg and you have to incur medical costs and that sort of thing. The supermarket would have purchased casualty insurance to cover themselves for any damages to people in their store. So it's the third party. So So the supermarket isn't being covered as in damage to the supermarket isn't being covered, but damage to third parties in the supermarket are being covered. And another example is product liability. So I have my red cup that I've been drinking water from. Let's say, for example, well, I really don't want to say this, but let's hope everything is okay with the cup, okay? This is just an example, but let's just say there's some kind of material in the cup that makes it unsafe to actually use, to consume out of. Maybe the plastic that it's made out of has some kind of deficiency or something like that. If I get sick from drinking from this cup, then that's a casualty claim against the manufacturers of the cup, because they've created a product that's damaged a third party, the third party being their client or their customer. And the third branch of casualty is employer's liability. So this one is a bit straightforward. If I am running a bakery and I hire someone, any damage to that person while on the job is going to be covered under my casualty policy. So I hope that's a bit clearer for you. As you can tell, casualty is so broad, it's just any and everything can happen. So something as simple as someone falling down to some kind of contaminated cup, it's very, very broad. And because of that, we have to keep track of a lot of different things. Changes in the marketplace, changes in the legal system. The legal system matters a lot in casualty, because think about somebody getting injured and suing a company. Then what happens is you have to go to court. And so if the courts are treating those kinds of injury awards differently, so if they're paying out for injuries in a different way, maybe sometimes they increase the benefits, sometimes they rarely decrease the benefits, that's also going to impact the claims that the insurance company receives. And so there's a lot to be considered, not just when people are going to die in being an actuary. And the last one is actuarial exams are difficult.
I don't even need to see the chat today, that's a fact.
Yeah, that's a fact. Honestly, I can only speak from my own experience and everybody else have ever asked, and it's a fact in all of our minds. It's to the point where, you know, failing an exam isn't like this whole big shameful event. It's almost like everyone kind of goes through that whole, you know, you fail an exam, you get up and you go again. In fact, it's admirable when you fail an exam and you just keep going and you keep going and you keep going. These exams are very, very difficult. So if you're in the exam process already and you weren't successful, don't be discouraged. In fact, it's a big test of character if you can just keep going. So we're going to talk about what your next steps are now. And you'll see in the big span at the top of the screen, there's the A. So we're going to talk about your action plan. Now, I can't tell each of you what to do, because each of you have your own strengths and weaknesses and interests and likes and dislikes and your own vision for your future. So the purpose of this slide is, let's just go in with an open mind. We're going to talk about some different things that you can consider. Maybe you knew them before, maybe you didn't. It's all about broadening your perspective and just discussing openly what you can consider doing now. So if you're in your final year of university especially, you might be thinking about doing some job hunting, and you can start looking for an actuarial job. If you are or aren't, doesn't matter really what year you're in, you might want to start thinking about writing exams if that's something that's possible for you. I think employers usually prefer candidates who have 1 or 2 exams to those that don't. So if it is possible for you, I understand not everyone will be able to write exams, but if you can, then I say start as early as you can and prepare yourself. We'll talk about that later, but get ready for a very bumpy ride. Applying for scholarships. So there are a few scholarships I know in the Caribbean for actuarial students. I'm not an expert on them, but I'm sure somebody on this call might be. So if you have questions about that, you can ask, and hopefully someone on the call can answer about the specifics of the scholarships that are available. But don't look at a scholarship and think, oh, I'm never going to get this. Just apply for it, because really there's nothing to lose. Just go for it, and who knows what could happen, you know. So put in the time to put together your scholarship applications, and you know, if you are lucky enough to get a scholarship, then that can also help you with the exam process. Brushing up on skills. So this particular point is on my slide because, as I mentioned, I did a bit of research. So I asked a few well-respected actuaries, what would you say to students who are in this actuarial program, and you know, what would benefit them? And one person said they should brush up on their technical skills, because when candidates come in, if they have a decent level of Microsoft Excel, of Microsoft Access, of VBA, of R or Python programming, and we're not saying to be an expert, we really just mean be comfortable in it. So you're not starting from zero, you're able to do some basic things like maybe a VLOOKUP or a pivot table in Excel would be hugely beneficial, because the company is going to look at that and say, okay, this person can hit the ground running. I don't need to train from zero. So there's so many online courses that are completely free. I would say if you feel like you are lacking in any one of those softwares that I just mentioned, then take an online course, build up your confidence, and just brush up on your skills, on your technical skills. Now, I'm also going to just put in non-technical skills here as well. And we spoke about this before, but brushing up on your non-technical skills would also help you, because it's going to show in your interview if you have strong non-technical skills. If you have strong communication, you know how to present yourself, you know how to communicate with confidence, it's going to make a difference in your interview. So, and not just in your interview, but also beyond that, and once you enter the workplace. So think about brushing up on your non-technical skills as well. Cast a wide net or get a foot in the door. So if you want to eventually become an actuary and that's your goal and that's all you're going to go for, this is more, by the way, geared towards people in the final year of the program, but you might just want to keep an open mind. And if you find that you didn't get through with the actuarial jobs that you applied for, don't get disheartened. Look for something else. You know, there could be other data analysis roles. The point is, once you get your foot in the door and you start building up your reputation, you start building up your professional persona, it's going to pay off for you, and people will notice. And so building up your professional network and all of those things can help you to get to where you want to be, even if you don't start exactly in actuarial. Look into further education abroad. So this point I made because I went to University of Waterloo, as you know already. So I'm going to just speak about a couple different programs that I found during doing a little bit of research. So I found that the University of Waterloo has a master's program in actuarial science that will allow you to get exam exemptions too. So while you're doing your master's program, you can come away with maybe 3 exams just from doing well in the coursework. And that program also has an internship program, so you'll be able to get a little bit of experience as well. So of course it is going to be quite an investment, but you get a master's degree, you get a couple exams, and you get some internship experience. So it's quite a interesting prospect if that's a possibility for you. But I found something else. So yes, as you know, I live in France, and I really never thought I would live in France. So just even saying it feels kind of strange to me still. But since I've been here, I realized how affordable tertiary education is in Europe. And when I say Europe, I'm actually excluding the UK for now, because I think what I'm about to say doesn't apply to the UK. But I've seen that in France, it's very normal for people to have done their undergrad, done a master's, done another master's. So there's so many people around me who are on their second master's degree, and it's just completely normal here. It's just because the education is so affordable, and that includes international students as well. So I found that there are a couple international students in France who are studying economics and mathematics. And in my company, we do hire interns. So we've hired some international people who have come to France, who have done their masters, who are getting actuarial experience. And in fact, one of them in particular did such a good job with us that he got a full-time position after graduation. So another thing I found is in Germany, tertiary education is free. Now, I don't know if you're as surprised as I am, so I'm going to say it again. It's free. I found a program that's a Masters of Actuarial Science in Germany, and it's free. It's in English, and I think it has an internship element to it as well. So, Europe isn't always so widely considered, I think, but they do have their little gems if you do a little bit of research. It seems like tertiary education here is quite affordable. If you are interested in trying something else and furthering your studies, it could be something to consider. And the last one is build your professional network. We're going to talk about networking in a bit more detail later on. This is something that you should be doing right now. It doesn't matter if you're in year 1, 2, or 3. This is something that I would put on your action plan if I were you. The last point is just some combination of the above. So take a look at the list, add new things that I didn't even touch on, and come up with your own action plan and what makes sense for you and where you want to go and where you are right now. So with that, this kind of opens up the first question and answer session. So I guess I will wait for Caitlin to let me know if there are any questions coming in.
Okay, I see one in one channel. You can see.
Oh yeah, by all means, you can come off of mute and ask your questions as well.
Okay, hi. I was just wondering, why did you choose to be a P&C actuary?
Yeah, you know what? Okay, so I think it kind of chose me. So it's not a great response, I know, but it just so happened that when I was in school and I applied for this internship, it was with a P&C company. And once I got into the field, I started learning a lot more about this P&C side of insurance, because when I was in university, all of my actuarial courses were in life insurance, and I actually didn't know much about P&C at all. But once I started working in it and started discovering this kind of whole new world, I just really, really liked it. And because I had P&C experience on my resume, then once I applied for another job, they were like, oh, P&C, okay, come and work in a P&C role again. And so I kind of kept going down that P&C route. And then, of course, once I started working, talking to fellow P&C actuaries, they convinced me that P&C is where I should be.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
One person asked, is education in Germany free to foreigners?
Yeah, I think it's free to international students. And I can share with you, Caitlin, the name of the programs I found afterwards if people want to know.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, hi, good day. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What made you decide to move to Europe?
Spoiler alert, because I'm supposed to talk about my journey at the end of the presentation.
Don't spoil it.
All right.
Okay. What is it like working in Paris as an actuary? Is it?
It's interesting. I get kind of lucky because I work in English. So that's why my French is still a work in progress, even though I've been here for quite some time. Of course, there are a lot of French actuaries, and the key thing is all of the actuarial guidance that comes out of France is in French, and so it's a bit difficult for me sometimes to participate in local events because of the language barrier. But even though I work in France, my role is a European role. I think there's a bit of an echo. Would you mind muting? Okay, thank you. So I think even though I work in France, I do work in a regional role. So my current role means that I'm responsible for 15 countries across Europe. And so because of that, I feel more like a European actuary that's learning more about the European environment and the market and how things work. But speaking specifically about France, from a very technical point of view, it's been a real learning experience just in terms of the way they structure their policies, the way the underwriters and brokers interact with each other, and the kind of products that people are interested in. And I see that France might have a little bit of a difference in terms of some of the legal structure and some of the legislation around injuries and who should be paying and whatnot versus other countries. A classic example would be with the coronavirus of last year. France was one of the only countries in our portfolio, I should say, in Europe that ruled about paying off the business interruption claims. Now, I think this might be a little bit too complicated to get into for now, but yes, there is that different experience. And of course, not speaking the language does limit me while I'm here. So that's why I'm trying to learn French in my free time to be able to participate a bit more in the local environment.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about COVID-19, right? How does that affect the actuarial science world at the moment?
That's a really broad and difficult question because it affects different lines of businesses in different ways, and it might even affect life insurance differently to P&C. So I can speak a bit about P&C. That's where I have my experience, of course. Actuarially, once COVID started getting very severe last year, we had to do a bunch of ad hoc emergency analyses to try to predict what we thought could happen to the profitability of our book because of the disease and what could happen on a grand scale with companies closing down, with people potentially getting ill at work, etc. So COVID impacted casualty in a couple of ways. One, of course, is that if employees get ill on the job, then that's a casualty claim. So that definitely was something to be considered in terms of where do we have exposures and how are the companies managing this risk? Are people working from home or not? Are these companies still operational or are they closed temporarily? All of those things had to be considered. But another surprising, I guess maybe not surprising impact was that, as I mentioned, there is also a big element of slip and falls. But because everybody was at home, nobody was slipping and falling. So in a way, the exposure in that type of risk was reduced because supermarkets had less traffic and malls and cinemas were closed and all of that. So it had the opposite effect there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about property as well. So from a fire point of view, fire is a broad term that I use, but I really mean property insurance. The manufacturing plants were operating less and less, and some of them even closed. So there was less chance of a fire being started because of a machinery breakdown. And in that way, there was less exposure. On the flip side, more people were working from home, and more people are cooking at home, and more people are using water at home. So using your kitchen, using your bathroom, that sort of thing. And so the exposure on the residential side went up. So as you can see, just from those 4 little examples, every single type of product had a different reaction. Some were positive in terms of the losses coming in being less, and some of them the other side, where they would expect more losses from that kind of product.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I can get on with the second half of the presentation. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to the P of the span. This is building your professional persona. I have a couple embarrassing stories. I won't share all of them, and oh gosh, I hope you don't ask me about them in the Q&A after. But when I say build your professional persona, I mean, at this point, it's possible that many of you haven't actually entered an office or corporate environment, or haven't worked in a corporate environment. And that's totally normal. I hadn't worked in a corporate environment until my first day of work. And there are so many different rules and unspoken rules and etiquette and behavior expectations that go with working in a corporate environment that you kind of have to learn on the go. But what I think could be helpful to you now is to imagine your professional persona. So think about who you want to be in the corporate world. When you are at work, who do you want to be? What kind of reputation do you want to have? When you are under pressure, how would you like to react? When you have a difficult conversation to have with a manager or with a colleague, how do you want to react? Think about, really just put yourself in a difficult situation. Imagine that you are really behind on a task, and because it's just taking so much longer than it should, you feel very pressured. So you're working and your manager comes and he says, "Why are you not done yet? I need this now. Plus, take this other thing. I need it by tomorrow." When that happens, how will you react? So kind of play out that situation. How can you remain calm and cool and respectful in the work environment? The other thing is that every office might be different, because each company has such a strong culture that I've found that working in one office doesn't mean you'll know exactly how to act in every single office. That culture thing is really, really important. I can share a story with you where at my first job when I was an intern, I quickly learned that you don't bring fish for lunch, because I had some delicious fish, I put it in the microwave and I heat it up, and then I'm eating, and of course the office smelled like fish for the whole day afterwards, and it was very obvious that it was from me. And so I thought, okay, I'm never going to eat fish again in the office. But before that, I didn't know that that was a thing. So that's just a silly example of things that happen in the office place. And but the real point is to just imagine about who you want to be in the office, and try to I would recommend actually looking at TV or movies, and if you find that there's a character that kind of embodies what you would like to be like, then look at that person very actively and see how they dress, how they speak, how they present themselves, and hopefully something kind of subconsciously impacts you, so that once you're in the office, it comes a little bit naturally. But there are some things, even though different offices are different, there are some things that are the same, and that is being respectful is always, always, always important. And if you can't be respectful in the office, it's going to be really, really bad for you and for your reputation. So this be a sponge that you see on the screen now is really just saying, when you get into the office place, just look around and try to absorb as much information as you can. So just be a sponge. You're just looking at how people write emails, in terms of how do you address your boss? Do you say, "Dear Mr. Matthews," or do you say, "Hi, John," or do you say, "To whom it may be concerned"? It's just different offices might have different expectations as well. I've had interns be very, very formal with me, and I had to say, "Please, you can be relaxed." And then I've had others that off the bat are just extremely informal, and I have to say, "Okay, you kind of need to maybe be a bit more professional in the workplace. So it's a learning curve, and of course, once you just get started, everybody is going to expect that you will have a few weeks of figuring it out. So don't worry if you make a mistake. It's not the end of the world. And this point about making the right impression is just, if your boss can't trust you to present to a client, to interact with colleagues in a respectful way, then they are probably not going to give you those opportunities. So it's really important to be professional so that they know they can trust you to represent the company in front of a client, or even to represent the department in front of a colleague. So that's something to keep in mind as well. We're going to talk about exams now. So, will you make the investment? We've all heard of that phrase, no pain, no gain, and of course it does apply to the actuarial career as well. And we just established that the exams are hard, and that part is not a myth. When I was studying for my exams, there were points where I thought, okay, yeah, I'm in over my head. I can't do this. I should probably give up. And I thought, okay, how can I reframe what I'm doing in order to motivate myself? When I started thinking of it as an investment, I started finding myself a bit more motivated. So I started saying, okay, yes, this costs money, this costs time, I have to sacrifice liming, I have to sacrifice watching movies with my parents or spending time with my brother, all of these little things you have to just give up because you have to be studying. Sometimes it can all seem like too much. But if you realize that it's just an investment, you're sacrificing now and it will pay off in the future, it somehow shifts your perspective and you kind of get a bit more motivated. Something else that I thought about that really helped me is, and I'm focusing a lot on the mind frame here, because of course, as I mentioned, I can't tell you exactly how and when to study, but I think having a resilient mind frame and something and having an attitude that just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, it'll pay off a lot, and it will help you to succeed. So sometimes I would say to myself, okay, imagine Sarayyah who finishes her exams. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to imagine this person who's a fellow now and is able to come home after work and not study. That sounds weird. I don't even know what I would want to do. These are just thoughts I would have. And I imagine this person and I say, she's going to thank me. She's going to be so happy that I chose to study right now. And so I kind of was thinking about future Sarayyah and how proud she might be of me for making the sacrifice in that moment. And that helped me to keep going. So hopefully that works for you. I don't know. It might work for some, it might not, but just keep going. The perseverance and leveling up picture there is because when I was studying for university exams, I thought it was pretty hard. I thought, okay, I'm reaching my limit. This is me, and this is as far as I can go in terms of difficult exams. And then I started writing actuarial exams, and I realized, okay, what I've been doing is not gonna get me where I need to go. There's a phrase, but I think I'm going to mess it up if I try to say it. Like, what got you here won't get you there. Something like that. So I realized that I had to level up. I had to push past these boundaries and limits that I had put on my own self. And I had to study harder than I even thought I could. And at the end of the day, that's what the actuarial process will do to you. It will kind of prove to you how hard you can work. And if you pass or fail an exam, at the end of the day, you have that. And that does feel empowering to know that you were able to study that hard. And you just you keep going. Even if you fail, you just get up and go again. In terms of strategy and preparation, this one is very practical. If you don't have good exam strategy, you're probably going to run out of time on the exams. I was a grader for exams a couple of years ago, So I was responsible for correcting papers on one of the upper level Casualty Actuarial Society exams. And I was a little bit shaken up when I realized that one person for one question would write a whole page and the other person would have 1 line or 2 lines. And this person would bullet point their answer and they both get the same marks. And I realized, okay, this is quite an important takeaway. Sometimes when you really know something and the question is only asking you for one piece of that thing, you might just write, and then say, oh, by the way, I know this other thing too, and write. But they don't care when they're grading your paper. They just care about that one point that they're looking for. So don't waste time writing a lot. Just be very concise and to the point, because that time that you spend can be really useful in other parts of the exam. Another thing that I'm sure you've heard of before is know when to move on from a question. And I get it. You're writing an exam and this question is like, you feel like you're 80% there, but something just not working out. And you know, okay, I just need to work out this thing and then everything will be fine and I'll keep going, and you end up getting stuck on that little thing. And you spend all your time there for maybe 1 or 2 marks. But there are other questions that are left completely untouched that you knew like the back of your hand, and you could have done in 2 twos and gotten a lot more marks. So strategy is really important. You have to train yourself in exam strategy in order to do well in the actuarial exams, because they're almost designed to be so long that you have to be writing at the speed of lightning in order to finish them on time. So if you don't have a good exam strategy, you might run out of time. That's my experience with the exams. So after hearing about all of that, you just have to ask yourself now if you're willing to make the investment, if you're willing to make those sacrifices and push yourself to the next level. Now we've reached the end of the span and the end of the presentation. You're supposed to laugh. That was one of my jokes. I don't know if you got it. But anyway, this is talking about networking. And networking to me is really, really key because it gives you a lot of different things. Networking can provide a group of trusted people that can help you to make decisions. They can also help you to give you direction in your actuarial career. There have been times where I was at a crossroads. Let's say I had an opportunity presented to me and I wasn't sure what to do. And when I have a situation like that, there's a list of people that I will go to, and some of them are actuaries, on actuarial decisions like this. So when it comes to careers, I've built up a network of people that I can trust, and I ask them, what do you guys think I should do? So they act as a sounding board for me, and it's really, really important because they give me different perspectives that I hadn't considered before, and I feel more confident that I'm making the right decision when I consult with my network. So as I mentioned before, it doesn't matter if you're in year 1, 2, 3, you can start networking now. And I just put a couple examples up on the screen of things that you can use to build your network. The Actuarial Club program, Actuaire du Monde, hope I pronounced that right, I've been here for a long time. I don't know if Jean is still on the phone, but Actuaire du Monde, as he mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. Thank you. It's a great opportunity for you guys because they are looking for students to join their mentorship program, and you might get paired with an actuary who is experienced, and you can share your experiences and learn from them, and they can give you direction. So I would say definitely check that out. Luckily it's on the screen, so you hopefully know how to spell it now, and then you can find it online and do some more research there. CAA events. So this is the Caribbean Actuarial Association. You're probably all a bit more familiar with it than even I am, but I had the privilege of attending the virtual conference last year, and that was my first time actually of attending the conference, but I'm so happy I went because even though it was virtual, so off the bat, it's virtual. You're always going thinking, how can I network in a virtual environment? But they did have some virtual networking events that allowed me to get in touch with people who I didn't even know were actuaries, who I knew their names through a friend of a friend, or you know how it goes. So the CAA events are also a real treasure trove for you to attend as students and to get your name out there. You know, ask questions, be visible, and have people notice you. Another thing about conferences in general, but also about the CAA event, is beyond the networking aspect of it, I always come away with such a different perspective. So you attend all of these talks, you learn about actuaries who are studying, researching these amazing things from all around the world or all around the region, and sometimes not even actuaries. We had economists as well on the conference last month. And when you come away from that conference, you feel invigorated. You actually feel like your mind has just widened a little bit, and that's really invaluable to me as a professional. Hearing from colleagues, or you know, just other professionals in my area of study, what are they doing? What are their challenges? And then you think to yourself, well, how can I implement what they talked about in my own space? You know, so really, really, really beneficial. Professors and lecturers, I know Mr. Smart is on the call, so just talk to your professors, talk to your lecturers, share your vision with people. And if they know that this is where you want to go, then I feel like that kind of helps to make it a reality. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Your fellow students, talk to each other, and consider that your growing actuarial network. In fact, it doesn't even need to be an actuary. You guys probably have courses that aren't actuarial, like maybe a Spanish course or maybe a general math course with people who aren't actuaries. So don't just narrow your focus to actuaries. Be broad. Speak to people and share with them the program that you're in, the vision that you have for yourself, and just be open about that. Guest speakers, so that includes myself. If you want to connect with me afterwards, you all know how to spell my name. It really is quite a complicated spelling, so you won't find many people with it. As soon as you Google my name, you'll find me on LinkedIn. So I'm only happy to add you all on LinkedIn and address any questions you have afterwards as well. That point about being visible, I put it again, this is something I just mentioned, where if you're in an environment where you can ask a question, or you can say hello, or you can say thank you, just these little courtesies that help you to actually be visible. You know, don't be just quiet and in the back where people can't see or interact with you. You want people to see you. You want people to interact with you. That's a part of networking. And of course, yes, as I said, it doesn't have to be actuarial contacts. And so you know how it goes. If you share your vision, let's say your family friend or an uncle or an aunt or something like that, and you say, you know, I really want to be an actuary. I want to work in an insurance company and whatnot. This person will hear that, may not think anything of it, go away. And then what if in 2 weeks that person is talking to somebody else and that person say, you know, I'm looking for an actuary, you know, we're going to have an opening up soon and whatnot and whatnot. Then the person in the middle might connect the dots and say, hey, he'll probably tell you about that opportunity and he'll put that on your radar. And that's what I think about networking. Networking puts things on your radar and puts you on other people's radars too. And so you'll think about it as if your arm is only this long, so this is as far as I can reach, but with a network, I can reach much further. That's really the end of my presentation. I was going to ask you to fill in the blanks here. Caitlin, I don't know if you could help me with this. So I would ask you all to fill in the first block on the top. Can you remember what that should be? What is it? Oh, skills, okay. Second. What is it?
Professional pursuit.
It's a bit trickier. I would give you the points for professionalism too. Don't worry. And the A?
Actuarial.
And the N?
Networking.
Here you go. Full marks, guys. Great job. That shows that some of you at least were listening to me, so I'm happy about that. And now it's going to be story time. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and see if I could figure out how to do that. I'm going to see my dog. Okay, there we go. Perfect. So I'm going to talk about my own journey, how I came to be here, and I want you to listen out for parts where the span played a role in my own career. And don't worry, I won't test you on it after. So, as you know, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and then I moved to Canada, and I attended the University of Waterloo, where I got my undergraduate degree. So while I was in university, of course, through my actuarial courses, through teamwork, through presentations, I started building up my skills, my technical and non-technical skills. And then I started looking for internships because that was a part of the program I was in. I needed to get an internship in order to graduate, really. And so, to be honest, my first interview was very rough. When I look back on it now, I say, wow, Sarayyah, how could you have expected to even get hired like with that kind of an interview, you know? And then I realized, okay, I need to build my non-technical skills a bit. I need to build my interview skills. That's actually something that you can't just walk into and be unnatural at it. You have to work. And so I worked at it, and then I was lucky enough to get offered that first internship at a P&C company. And this is where the whole bringing fish for lunch thing happened. And I started realizing, okay, my professional persona is something else I have to work on. So I started figuring out how I should dress when I go into the office, how I should speak. I tend to speak very quickly, and I have to try to slow down a little bit sometimes and speak in a way that people can understand me, especially people who are not Trinidadian, because of course I might still have a little bit of an accent, especially if I get excited about something. But I'm not really, well, I mean, sometimes I might get excited about actuarial work too. But anyway, so that's where I started building up my professional persona. And I went back to school after the internship ended, and I said, well, what's my action plan? What do I do now? I said, okay, you need to graduate. You're actually going to graduate very soon. You probably want to start looking for a job and trying to get hired. So once you graduate, you have this nice, smooth transition into the working world. So I started looking for a job, and I found a job with an insurance company, and it was a business intelligence role, which meant I would be working with a lot of data, and I thought it would be more on the business and statistics side of my degree, and a little bit less on the actuarial side, which I was very open to at that point. So I applied and I interviewed with them, and I thought, okay, I'm getting a chance to show off my new interview skills. I think this went well. I get a call from them a few days later, and they say, look, we don't really want you for the business intelligence role. We found somebody else. But we do have an opening in the actuarial department, so would you consider coming in on a part-time role while you finish your undergraduate, and then maybe when you graduate you can have a permanent position? But they didn't make any promises, but they said maybe when you graduate. So I said, okay, you know what, this is in line with my action plan. This is something I can do. At least I'll get some more experience, and then when I graduate I'll be able to at least say, hey, I've worked for 2 different companies now. So I went along with it, and I thought I had my professional persona all figured out after my first experience. But this new office was an open concept. It was an open office concept. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with what that means, but instead of everyone having a nice private cubicle, I was here working, not even exaggerating, I'll be here working, and my manager is right here working. right next to me. So if he just goes like this, he can see my whole screen. And if I sneeze too hard, he might jump. It was just that close. So I said, okay, I need to figure this out as well, because he's right next to me and I'm just starting. I have so many questions, but I can't just be like, hey boss, how do you do this? Hey boss, I'm so happy to be here. Hey boss, how are you doing today? He'll just be like, okay, you know what, I made a massive mistake hiring this person. And I had to realize that even though there was not a physical boundary between us, in an open office concept, there is an invisible understanding that you have done. You can't really just disrupt the person every 2 minutes. And so I had to build my professional persona again. And once I got off the ground running, I graduated from university. I got the permanent contract offered to me. And this is also when I relied on my actuarial or my professional network. I wrote to them, I said, I got offered this opportunity, what should I do? And so they each weighed in with their different advice, and then I came to the decision to accept the offer. I started working full-time in that company in 2014, and I spent 3 years there learning a lot about all kinds of P&C lines of business. Because it was a very small shop, I worked on casualty, I worked on property, I worked on financial lines, and so it was a time of intense learning, and I built up a lot of technical skills. After a while working there, I started checking in with myself again. Said, well, what's your action plan? And that's because your action plan isn't going to be made now and last forever. It's something that you're going to have to check in with every now and again. You know, am I still on track? Do I need to change it? How am I doing? So I checked in again on my action plan. And I said, okay, I started really, really liking the Spanish language. And of course, in Trinidad, we have to learn Spanish in school up to a certain point. So I wasn't starting from zero, but I really, really enjoyed speaking this foreign language. It made me feel very proud of myself. And so my action plan was like this: get fluent in Spanish, continue passing exams to get your associateship, and then try to find a Spanish-speaking role, because I wanted to work in Spanish. So at some point, a recruiter ended up calling me, and he said, hey, you know, what are you interested in? I have this position for you. Are you interested? I said, look, I'm not interested. This is what I want. This is my action plan. I want to work in a Spanish-speaking role. And if I don't get that, I am absolutely happy to stay where I am, because I do enjoy my job. He said, okay, well, honestly, I'm sorry, but that doesn't exist at all. So yeah, Spanish-speaking roles, you're not going to really find too many of them around. Good luck to you. Goodbye. I said, okay, fine. But then a couple of weeks later, he calls me. He says, hey, you won't believe this. I found a Spanish-speaking role. Do you want to apply? And so I said, okay, sure. I applied to the role, and I ended up having to go through quite a strenuous interview process in Spanish. And it was funny, actually, because the first interview I had all of my notes in English. That was a very bad oversight by me. So I had like all of these technical responses and written out and everything. The guy picks up the phone. Hola, ¿podemos hablar en español? I was like, okay, I made a grave miscalculation here. And I somehow survived that first interview in Spanish, and they asked me to do a second one. So I said, okay, I'm not gonna get fooled twice. I had this page of all my notes in Spanish, you know, even had to Google some of the words, and I put it together. I said, okay, anything they ask me, I'm going to be able to respond. The guy answers, he's like, hello, how are you? I'm like, okay, I can speak in Spanish if you want. No, it's okay, we can do English. I'm like, okay, sure, no problem, great. So that happened. And then for whatever reason, you know, they ended up, I did kind of salvage the interview by the end of it, and so I got offered the position. And I moved to Miami to work in Latin America. And that's where I became a casualty actuary. So previously, as you would have remembered, I worked in many different lines of business, and then I started streamlining into casualty. I worked in LATAM for a few years, again, different work environment, different culture. And at some point I checked in again on my action plan. this is around the time where I became a fellow. So I said, okay, what do you do now? You're a fellow. Are you happy to stay in this exact same role? Do you maybe want to transition to a different department or even to a different marketplace? And I was asking myself all of these questions, but I should mention that while I was working in LATAM, I was very conscious, and actually this is something I would recommend to all of you as well, that when you're doing your job, you do it to the best of your ability. And when you're interacting with people, you make a strong impression so that they know that you're competent, they know that you work hard and that you have work of a good quality. So I tried to do this when I was in LATAM. And then this is kind of where the power of networking comes in. I got a WhatsApp message from a colleague saying, hey, there's going to be a position open in Paris soon. Are you interested? And I said, okay, sure. I wasn't really sure, about the specifics of the role or anything, but I thought, okay, just keep an open mind and see what happens. Anyway, I was lucky enough to be interviewed by the French team for this position or the European team, and then I was offered the role. And so I moved to France. But later I realized that if I hadn't had that working relationship with my colleague, then I would not have been on the radar for the job that I currently have. But it's because I was sharing my vision with him that says, one day maybe I want to try living somewhere else. I'm not tied to Miami. I'm very open to travel. So he knew that. So he thought, well, this is someone we can maybe contact for this role. And so that's why I think it's so important to share your vision, have people know what you're open to doing. And I realized that the hiring manager for my role would not have thought of me if I didn't have that connection with somebody who he worked with, and it was sort of a kind of a rigmarole connection there. And of course I had to interview and go through the whole process, but the whole point is I was put on the radar. And so, even my conversation with you all today is because I was speaking to Yui Mona, and then Mr. Smart was at that call, and then he contacted me after, and now I'm here. And so that's obviously another kind of networking connection that brought me right here to speak with you. And with that kind of ends my span and ends my presentation. So I'll be happy to take any questions that you guys have.
I have a question. If you could five or at most 5 major tips on how to prepare and study for the ActSci exams, specifically the preliminary ones.
Okay, you kind of teased my little way out, because I was going to say, well, I studied for the CAS exam, so I'm not sure about the SOA ones, but you say preliminary, so I can't get away. It's been a couple of years now since I've studied, but I think practice makes perfect. So for me, it was all about killing off those practice questions and making sure you do them over and over again, flagging the questions that were difficult for you and coming back to them, but not coming back immediately. So come back a week after. If you're still getting it wrong, keep it flagged, keep coming back to it until you get it right. Because I find like if I do the question, I get it wrong, I do it over, I get it right, it's probably because the solution is just very recent in my head, and it may not be that I've learned the concept. So you get it wrong, you learn the concept, kind of leave it alone, and come back to it and test it again to see if you really retained it. Exam organization, I think, is a really, really big one for me. So what I did was to have an Excel spreadsheet that said, all right, today's date is the beginning of my exam journey. And by this date, I will finish reading my source material. By this date, I will finish doing this set of practice questions. By this date, I will do this. By this date, I'll do that, etc. So by the end of it, I even had a color coding that would just flash bright red if I was overdue. So then I started getting pressure. I was like, oh gosh, overdue. I need to work harder, But just having that mini timeline or mini deadline kind of schedule helped me to be able to stay on track and helped me to very quickly identify if I needed to put in more hours or if it was okay to actually take a little Saturday afternoon off and relax a little bit, It helped to track my progress. So I guess that's 2. I guess so I kind of mentioned it already, but just about the exam strategy. So knowing when to move on from a question in order to save yourself time later on. And of course, as you get into the upper level exams and you're writing out the questions, answers, I'm not sure. I think the preliminary ones might be multiple choice still. Then of course, knowing how much is enough information and not giving any more than that. Okay. I'm very specific about my pen. I needed to have this particular pen, and I bought, like how pencils just have these soft kind of spongy things you could put on them. So I chose my brand of pen that would fit on those pencil spongy things, and I made sure and put them on my pen. And so I would practice all of my exams with that pen so that you're not changing anything on exam day, and try to find a pen that really feels comfortable, because honestly, especially with the written exams, after a while I kind of stopped feeling part of my hand, so I'm like, okay, this pen needs to be properly comfortable because it's pressure in there. It's just pressure. Let me think. So this one you might have heard already, but in terms of the past paper exams, I tried to save them. So I know some study guides actually create their own questions, and I really like those because you just do the ones that they've created, and you kind of save the past exams for something that you can kind of do under exam pressure without having seen the questions before. Especially the last exam. So that last exam, I wouldn't even read it. If I see it, I just turn the page quick. I don't want to see anything, no hints. I treat the last exam as a proper exam. And then I think maybe in like the last 3 weeks before the exam, or maybe even a month out from my exam date, I start doing those papers, timing myself, grading myself, and going over the corrections again. And on the day before my exam, I don't do anything. So I'm not doing so let's say I'm writing a 2021 exam. I will save the 2020 exam, and I won't write it the day before the exam. I'll write it 2 days before the exam. So that gives me enough time to find something that I really didn't know and study it in that day that I have in between and be calm about it. Because I've been in that position where the day before your exam, you write the most recent exam, and then you realize, wow, I didn't know this, and it's just almost too late. You get yourself into this whole anxiety and nervousness, and then you almost shut down, and you don't have time for that. So keep a day in between for any eventualities. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that gave a lot of information. Okay, so Lael asks, how many exams did you complete during your undergrad?
So I did 2. I did P and FM when I was in my undergrad. Yeah.
Hi, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So were there any other exams or like certificates or anything that you had to do in order to like specialize in P&C?
Any other exam? So the same way how SOA have their list of exams to become an FSA, there are separate exams to do for becoming an FCAS, which is what the title is for a P&C actuary. I think up until maybe the 5th exam, they're the same. So I think there are 4 or 5 preliminary exams that are the same for either one. And then you start branching off. So for casualty, there's the exams 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So there's 5 exams for the CAS route, plus there is a couple of online courses and a course on professionalism. So it's a whole different exam route.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, well, I guess there are no more questions.
Hi, I actually have a question.
Sure.
But it's about Actuary Without Borders. What exactly is it and what do they do?
So Actuaries Without Borders doesn't actually exist anymore. It's now Actuaires du Monde. So everything that Jean said at the beginning is Actuaires du Monde, and that's the organization going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One question. How long did it take to finish all these exams to become a fellow?
To become a fellow. So I got a couple of exam exemptions, which helped me to save about a year and a half, I think, out of the exam process. So once I graduated from Waterloo, I got about 3 exam exemptions, and then I was able to just get started on my upper level casualty exams. So I think I started writing exams in 2013, and then I qualified in 2018, so maybe about 5 years. But of course, without the exemptions, that you have to add on a couple of years for that. So I was a bit of an atypical case because of those.
Okay, thank you. That's incredible. What drew you to becoming an actuary? Like, how did it all happen?
People in insurance always say nobody ever dreamt of being in insurance as a kid, and somehow we just end up here. And I think that's pretty true for me as well. I went to school, of course, pursuing a bachelor's of mathematics, and I double majored in statistics and actuarial science. But I was actually more interested in the statistics part of it. I wanted to go into sports betting and trying to do all the fancy probabilities and odds and so on for the sports companies. But after a while, I think it took me a while, to be honest, to be convinced about the actuarial career. So that internship I applied to, it just happened to be an actuarial position. And then after kind of seeing what it was like on the job, I started liking it more and more. Personally, what I find most interesting now about being an actuary is the fact that you can be multidisciplined. So I have to use math, I have to use stats, I have to have a technical foundation, but I have to know business, and I have to be able to speak strategy and understand how a business is run, and profits and losses, and what drives a commercial decision. And so what really gets me going now is just the fact that I'm able to use technical mathematical skills as well as business sense. So you kind of don't get bored, you're developing 2 heads at once, if you will.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, I think that's it for the questions. So, Mr. Smart, if you'd like to say some things.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Can you all see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, very good. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for sharing this session, Caitlin. I thought this was very informative. Thank you, of course, Sarayyah, for giving so generously of your time and knowledge to our students. I also want to say thank you for the president of the CAA for coming out, and also to Jar, and to Mike, and to Renata for helping for this session together. And I hope it's one of the first of many that we will have in the future. In fact, I hope this is something that we have some a session like this at least once an academic year, where we have someone from the Actuaries du Monde, Actuaries of the World, to come and speak with us. Just in closing, I want to say what I think what Sarayyah, in describing, telling you about her journey becoming an actuary and what it's like being an actuary and the possibilities. I think the thing that I got out of it, and the thing that I believe, is that with an actuarial education, your only limits are the limits of your imagination. So that's really what I discern from it and what I believe. And I think Sarayyah did a good job of sort of driving home that point. So again, thank you very much. I don't have much else to say other than that. Thanks for coming out. Yeah, I thought it was a wonderful session, and kudos to the executive team for the club, the executives of the Actuarial Science Club. Thank you.
Okay, so in closing, I'd like to thank you again, Sarayyah, for taking the time out of your day to come and teach us SPAN. And your exam tips were amazing, by the way, forgot to say that. And I think a lot of us will take away that you have to have plans set in place. You can't just go into this without a plan and just be like, oh, I'm just doing this degree, and then like where you going to go from there, you know. So thank you for that. And also we also got you a little mug. It's with, I don't know if you can see it, and it has your name and your designation on it.
That's adorable. Thank you.
So if you have any like family members or whatnot who lives, I'll speak to you after.
I have plenty. Okay.
And we can like deliver it for them to like keep it for you until you can get it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I'd also like to say thank you for everyone else who's not a UE ASU member for coming out today and taking the time out of your day to come, because I know you guys are super busy. Like I can only imagine how busy you guys must be. So thank you so much. And obviously thank you to our USC members for also coming out today. So thank you everyone, and I think we can end the meeting here. If anyone else has anything to say before we close off.
Hi, so I just wanted to say I thought it was a very good presentation. Sarayyah is really good when we have persons who, you know, go on into careers and develop and actually take time to give back. So I thought that was really good and very good presentation. And to all you young budding actuaries out there, yes, it might seem difficult, but with discipline and hard work, you do have a bright future ahead. And you know, the Caribbean Actuarial Association is also here to support students as best as we can. As you know, there, as mentioned before, there's scholarships. We also have an exam fee reimbursement program, and so you know, there are tools, there are avenues out there for you. So you just need to do the research, get in contact with the right persons. So if you want, you can reach out to Stokely, you could get in contact with me. But I think it was well organized, well put together. Everyone was very professional, was very impressed, and look forward to probably joining the session soon.
Yeah, hi, this is Kyle. On behalf of the CA, let me second Pedro's comments. Thank you so much, Sarayyah and Jean, for your contribution, and to Mike and Renata. And yes, to you Actuarial Science Club people, well done. You know, keep up the good work. I just want to make a quick plug, because sometimes it seems our email messages aren't getting through. We found out the other day about an SOA student that got a lot of trouble with last exam sittings, and if we'd known about it, we the CAA, we would have been able to do something about it, because we were able to help somebody in the same situation in the same sitting. So Pedro and I were actually very disappointed. We didn't know that this particular student was in trouble. So if you are ever getting challenges with your SOA or CAS or IFOA examinations, and you're not getting through with the parent bodies, please let the CAA know, We do have some relationships, we do have some clout, we will go to war for you, and we usually win. But if we don't know you have problems, we can't do it. So, you know, just putting that plug in there. Once again, thanks so much.
Thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye.
Hi, thank you.